Lavia?
Yes, Aksham, go on. Go on.
So, hello and welcome to you all for this very live and informative session of Gravithon 2021. And my dear friends, our speaker for today's session is not a nationally famed. He is an internationally famed cybersecurity practitioner with solid expertise in providing strategies and technical directions, building new services lines, business lines, diverse teams, and capabilities. He has over 19 years of experience in informative technologies with 15 years dedicated to information cybersecurity in leadership and technical roles, landing and managing and delivering a wide range of cybersecurity services to multinational clients, mainly in the banking, financial, healthcare, and telecom sectors. So he is Dr. Meisam Eslahi, a senior director at EC Council Global Services, and today's session is Assume a Breach and Go Proactive. Sir, over to you.
Hi everyone. So excited to be here. So just to check one more time, everyone can hear me clearly?
So Chad, please respond, sir, if you can hear the...
Okay, let me share the screen.
Okay, sir. So this was the one-way communication. So Saksham will help you out in the Q&A and so on, sir.
Okay, but when I want to share my screen, it shows only panelists or host. How can I share it for everyone?
So you can share it up. So I had made you the co-host.
Okay, it's just have the...
Okay, yes, sir. Can you just check out, sir? Again, once again.
So I already shared. I'm not sure whether you can see it or
not.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. It's
your presentation is live now.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Hello, one more time. Thanks to be here. It's highly appreciated. Thanks for the amazing organizers to provide this opportunity. I am Meisam Eslahi, and in today's presentation, we are going to talk about assume a breach and go proactive. Obviously, we are going to talk about threat hunting and how we can have a balance between our protection and if any breach happened. But before we go into the main presentation, let me just have a brief introduction of myself. I am Meisam Eslahi, as just introduced to you. At the moment, I'm working as a senior director with the EC Council Global Services, which is the consultancy division of EC Council. I'm in charge for a different service line, both in the red and the blue side. I'm in the cybersecurity field for almost 20 years, but 20 years is more like an IT and 14 years dedicated to the information security. In my free times, I do some cybersecurity research, I do consultancy, I do the blogging. It would be amazing if you could have your time and check my blog at sekhub.medium.com. At the moment, I write a few technical series on the Windows Live analysis. We will have a quick overview of that in these sessions. It would be a great pleasure to connect to you all. Feel free to connect with me in LinkedIn or Twitter. We share together and definitely we learn together. So here is the agenda for today. This presentation is divided to the four main parts. In the part one, we have a brief discussion about digitalization and how fast we have to move to the digital era since the pandemic have started. In part two, we talk about the difference in depth, people, process, and technology, and we add a little bit of cheese on the top. And finally, we continue with the proactive threat hunting, and we use an overview of Windows Live analysis just as an example. So before I start, I would like to highlight a very typical disclaimer that whatever I share and discuss in this presentation is my point of view and is not my employer. So when business go digital, I'm pretty sure everyone here knows about the importance of the digitalization and the digital transformation. In today's world, we have to adopt a digital technology to improve our businesses. And it's applicable to everything, from a daily activity to the education, to even our normal chat and even this presentation. We have no doubt about a set of the benefits that has brought by digital transformation, such as efficiency, productivity, flexibility, agility, and the set of the other benefit I list down there. But in this presentation, let's don't talk that much about the benefits. I prefer to more talk about security challenges, cybersecurity challenges we faced as we forced to move super fast to adopt these technologies. Actually, the pandemic forced us is no more an option. And because it's about a survival. In the normal situation, we think of having a different of the digital technologies to provide, for example, better experience for our customers, or to create a new process or improve our current process in our business. But when the pandemic hit us badly, it's no more a matter of just benefit, it's a matter of survival. That's why the digital transformation has been rapidly accelerated. By taking a look at one of the reputable survey conducted by one of the well-known companies, as you can see, we can compare the digitalization in the global and in the Asia and Asia Pacific. As you can see, we have a really sharp hike in 2019 until the July 2020. So actually what we have expected to be done in like 5 to 10 years, it's happened just within a year. So it could be fantastic in operational point of view, but we could not even imagine that we are able to do it that fast. We have done it super quick, but are we ready for that? The readiness was the key. So when goes move to the digital era so fast, we face a set of the challenges. First of all, the rapid DevOps and unattended issues. So we forced to rapidly develop a new things and release it to the operation, and we may not have enough chance to really take care of the security. Of course, in most of the cases, we may have some sort of the penetration testing, source code review, or even bug bounty, considering the bug bounty is more time consuming in some parts compared to the other practices. But we may not have enough time to check everything as a whole and as deep as it's really needed. So lack of readiness added to the lack of visibility. So a lot of companies forced to temporarily hire ready-to-go systems. For example, a temporary, I just hire a professional to establish something in the cloud for me. So I don't have enough visibility. I may not aware of what exactly I have in that box, and I just using it. And definitely, when things go digital, by nature, it brings more attack surfaces. Attack surfaces means anything digital, which is exposed to the public internet. And technically, everyone all around the world can access to that. We put all this together, makes sense when the Bug Crowd 2021 in the Guide to the Attack Surface Management announced published a very scary statistics. Almost 500 plus the average number of unprotected application per organizations. So the larger the organization, the higher the chance that we release the application and it's not protected enough. And the other things that are very scary is the attack surface, as we discussed, more attack surface, we have that. Apart from this, we have the home users. So all of us are now working for a home for quite a long time. So we're connecting in the home network, which is may not as secure as the office. And on top of all of them, human errors, a high volume of online activity, even the online shopping, even the grocery. So my grocery technically mixed with my corporate email together in one machine, in one network. So not to mention the security challenge beside the advantage we could get from the digitalizations. So this is the statistics that released last year by the Star, which is one of the news agencies in Malaysia, that states cybersecurity cases raised by 82.5% within a short period, somewhere between the end of 2019 and the early 2020. So on the other hand, the other surveys shows that we are not prepared enough, well prepared to deal with these cybersecurity issues. So the problem is that we are not well prepared. And on the other hand, the hackers, as always, in majority, they are focused, motivated, and highly skilled. Highly skilled attacker, and the not secure enough operation. Having said that, shall we assume protection? I mean, how practical is to say, okay, I have that solution in place, it's well configured, and it can reasonably protect my digital assets against the external attackers. So shall we think of prevent the breach, or we should assume breach may happen? I'm pretty sure you may heard about the defense in depth, a layered security, a series of defensive mechanisms placed in different layers to protect valuable assets. So we should not only think about the technology, because when we said about defense in depth, the technology first come to our mind, that we can have something in the physical layer. Okay, critical information must be, for example, encrypted, how the remote users connect to our data, how we set up our firewall, IDS, IPS, and a bunch of other technology. But it's not only about the technology. We have another two critical factors there. Human, which we call it people here, and the process. So employees are the first layer of defense. Even if we use the best defensive solution to protect our organizations, one single human error can easily break it down. Simple as that. Not only the people and technology, the process is very important. Do we follow the best practices to configure our things? Do we have any SOP in case some incident happen? What we should do? Do we have any technical write-ups there? Okay, my server, I have seen some unusual traffic there. What should I do? These are all fall under the process. So we know we should have a different technology in place to have a reasonable security. We need a people who have reasonable training and awareness. We need a set of the qualification as well. But how easy, or better say, how practical is to have everything in place? Is that easy to manage all of these things together? This is what I want to discuss in the next slide. So normally when we talk about a triangle in the information security, we always talk about that traditional one: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But we have another amazing one here: the trade-off between security, functionality, and cost. Let me give you the example based on my experience. I'm in charge for the one service line which calls compromise assessment. When we sit in the client environment and we collect enough data, sufficient data, and then we analyze the data to look for any evidence of malicious activities. And obviously we are human and we need to use tools. Digital forensic, threat hunting, and especially threat hunting is still the human-driven things. But we should have an aid of the good tools. Anyway, make it short. We do the short listing of the many tools available for the compromise assessment, and one of them is the EDR, endpoint detection and response. Basically, when I want to choose an EDR for a particular client, we have to consider a lot of things. the options they provide to us, the deployment, is it a cloud base? Is it the host base? Is there any option that provide a combination of the both? How the collected data can help me to meet my security requirements, and on top of them, cost. How cheap is that? How much is the cost of the ownership, maintaining, licensing? So can we have the magic stick to prepare all the things to us on the table? I have a good security, I have full options, and it really meets the size of my pocket. It's cheap. I don't think anyone agree that we can have all these pillars together. But let's say, assume we are in the wonderland, in the very nice place that by chance we have all on the table. I find a technology which is secure, functional, and cost effective. Still, we have a bunch of the Swiss cheese on our table. What does that Swiss cheese model mean? So Swiss cheese model is a strategy. In the simple word, it says, just like every slice of the tasty Swiss cheese, we may have holes and security issues or misconfiguration in every layer of our protections. So as I listed here, it could be a system failure, human error, insufficient tuning, because when we have a tools and we place it in our environment, it takes a little bit of time to study the behavior, to understand the situation, and then we fine tuning it to make sure we can use the most of that tools and technology. But fine tuning is a matter. If we are not tuning our technology the way that we should, again, we have another hole in our layered security. Blind spots is a very important thing. So we have everything in place, but we may not fully aware of them. This is what I call it a scope X. If you didn't heard about the scope X, I have another presentation in the YouTube, Blue Team Village. I just presented in the recent DEF CON about the scope X subdomains and how we can address the issue and hunt for the malicious activities or threats or any security issues within the subdomains. It would be a great pleasure if you take a time and take a look and get back to me with the feedbacks that I can improve the scope X. So technically, scoping is one important part in every engagement. So if I want to do the penetration testing, for example, just last week, my operation team, my development team came to me and said, hey, we have a release in the few days. Could you please ask your team to do a penetration testing? And I said, yes. Would you please give me the scope? What are you supposed to assess? Give me the IPs. If there is a web application, give me how many pages there. So to make it simple, when we are scoping, we put everything in the one box and we give the box to the testers. But normally we focus on what we know and or what we think is important to be tested. Digitalization make it a little bit tricky. We may have a lot of things in our organization and corporate network without having control over it. For example, the shadow ITs, the BYODs. So I'm using my personal phone at the moment to connect to the corporate email. So can we have a full access to that personal devices to monitor everything? I don't think. So SCOPEX is not only talk about the shadow IT. It could be something that we really have it, we own it, but we are simply not aware of it because we were expanding fast over the years and years. So let's ask the question again. Shall we assume protections? We have enough budget. We have a very matured cybersecurity team. We place everything according to the best practices. Still, we have three major issues. This beautiful triangle, cost, security, and functionality, scope X, and the slice of the cheese. in that Swiss cheese model and the holes in every layer. That's why no wonder the Mandiant Security Effectiveness Report, I think this year or last year, if I don't mistake, published a very interesting statistics that shows 53% of attacks unnoticed. Attack happen in our organization, but we are not aware of it. Why? It could be happen in the blind spot. Our monitoring system don't have a wide visibility to cover everything. So that's why I strongly believe, in my opinion, protection is good. Of course, we have to focus on the protection and detection. We protect as much as possible, but we should always have the assumed breach in the back of our mind, back of our head, that what if we hit by cyber attacks and we are not aware of it? What if cyber criminals are already in our network, but no alert generated? Why no alert? Because we may not have the enough rules to detect that kind of attack. The attack could be a 0-day, or the attack is sophisticated and multi-stages. So for whatever reason, we may have something bad happen to our network and we are not aware of it. This is what we call it assumed breach. Okay, no, I'm agree with you. So assume that you are agree with me, actually. We agree that the breach may happen, or it may happen already, and we are not aware of that. What should we do? This is where we come to the very important things, practice in the cybersecurity. We call it threat hunting. So what is threat hunting in general? Threat hunting is a proactive and iterative practice to collect the data, to identify the assets, identify everything with our people, technology, and process. Look for any evidence of malicious or suspicious activities. So actually, it's supposed to watch the areas that our monitoring failed to watch. For example, if we have SOC, or we have any EDR, XDR, or I don't know how many characters we will add on the future behind that DR, we may have some blind spots. It's not only because we are not aware or we don't know how to do. Sometimes we have a technological barrier. For example, there is no any single technology that could effectively support everything in our organization. Especially if we have some client or we are part of the company which is operating for the many years ago, since many years ago, we may have some legacy systems. They are quite old and they are not supported anymore, but they are part of our operations. So the new technology don't support them. What we can do? Manual approach, or the best things, we do the automation. So this is where we said a threat hunting supposed to cover all the area in addition to the areas which is not support and monitored and covered by our solutions. So earlier I mentioned the threat hunting is a human driven. Yes, I don't want to go and debate for machine vs robots vs human, but at the moment it's a human driven because we need some sort of advanced and comprehensive human brain to look for the patterns. Of course, we need to have the aid of the tools and some advanced analytics. We will get back to this point later. So threat hunting in general, there are a lot of ways to do the threat hunting, but in general, we have two types, which is divided to the two different categories, unstructured and structured. The unstructured is a data-driven. We just have the bunch of the data in hand, and based on experience, we look for anything that may catch our eyes. Oh, okay, I have some strange IP there. I have some remote connection which is unknown to me. On the other hand, the structure mainly work based on the educated guess or the hypothesis. We have some set of the rules and the tools to use, and a set of the procedures to follow. For example, the new attack happened. I go and study the attack. I know what is the steps for that attacks. So based on that steps, I could come up with the hypothesis. We will have the example about that later, and then look for the evidences. So we may have another things like entity driven, TTP driven, Intel driven, or the hybrid. For example, the entity driven says that I don't care about the threat intels or any new attacks. I just want to focus on the specific assets in the organizations. For example, I have a server, which is very important, and I know my technology will not monitoring properly. I just want to do the threat hunting specifically for that particular server. This is what we call it entity driven. Sometimes we go TTP driven. The technique, technology, and process, the technique, tactic, and procedures used by the attackers. A new attack happened. The researchers have studied, and then release detailed technical information about that particular attack. So by reading that attack, we are curious. Is this attack happening on my assets in my organizations? So, but we should consider one important thing. The attack should be relevant to our assets. If something happened or that model of the, for example, Windows, if we don't use that, so we don't need to worry about that. In generic, we could combine all these techniques together. We have a bunch of the data. I just search for the lot of things there. Then I come up with some guesses. I have some hypotheses, and then look for any malicious activities or any indicators. So whether is it a structure or unstructured, in general, the threat hunting comes with many benefits. I just name a few here. It helps us to identify the unknown breaches, because when we do the threat hunting, we are not only look for the piece of malware or checking the file based on the hash. This is what we normally call it indicator of compromise or indicator of attacks. This is what called known. We are looking for unknown as well. Actually, this is something that maybe a debate on that, but this is again my opinion. IOC is good for detection engine, not for threat hunting. As a threat hunter, I don't use IOC to hunt, because if I have the IOC, I go and detect. I just update my detection engine with the list of the malicious known IPs, malicious known URLs, malicious known hash values for the files, and then I run my automated engine to detect them. I don't really need to hunt. Actually, we do threat hunting to identify the new attacks and then generate IOC and IOA and other indicator for them. And then we update our solution. And if we are kind enough, we update the word. So threat hunting helps us for the rapid response to threat. Why? Because we may have the early stage detections. So an attack could fall into the could carry out in the different stages. Start with the information gathering. If it's passive, we may not have to have something in hand, because I go and ask Uncle Google about your organizations. There may be no way for you to realize that somebody in some part of the world using the Google and search about your company. But once the information gathering get active, there is a chance for us to detect it. For example, the port scanning. For example, the vulnerability scanning on any direct communication with our assets. So the earlier we could detect the attack, the better the chance to respond to it. So, and both brought to us by the threat hunting. Why? Because threat hunting is proactive. I don't rely on the tools. I don't just set a tools, enjoy my popcorn and waiting for alert. No, I go myself proactively, open the gates, search through all the data, look for anomalies. The moment I find something wrong, I can stop it immediately, or I can trigger, for example, the incident response team. This is how it minimizes a cyber dwell time as well. The cyber dwell time is a time between we get breached until we discover it. Of course, the shorter the time, the happier we will be in the future. So imagine a hacker jump into our network, play around, and we've not detected it for a few months. It could be super scary. So the dwell time and minimizing it is very important benefit of the proactive threat hunting. So of course, we can identify a new attack surfaces, especially if we do the proactive information gathering about whatever is in our scope X to find all the information about something that we have, but we are not aware, and enhancing capabilities. Enhancing capabilities and the maturity level of our threat hunting, incident response, digital forensic, or even security. So imagine I'm a penetration tester. You give me a web applications. I did a penetration testing for you, and I come up with a list of the findings. Okay, these are the findings. Just go remediate them. You will be okay. So my threat hunting team do a threat hunting practice on the same web application. And suddenly we found something suspicious there, some hole in the layer. So what does it mean? Means that our penetration testing capability must be improved because there is something there that we can catch it, but our penetration testing team failed to catch. On the other hand, everything is nice, something happened. I go and check. Okay, is early a stage? No, I have chance to stop it, or by the time, in case that we are a small company, we can have by some time to ask help from the external incident responder investigators. Meantime, I could think of what is the gap in my capabilities at the moment. In case of something happen in future, which is similar to this, how I can improve myself to respond faster. So when we talk about the threat intelligence, there are a lot of things that could trigger it. So what normally trigger the threat hunting? An alert? An attack? Not really. If we are based on the alert, that could be incident response. That could be digital forensics. It's not really a proactive threat hunting. Proactive threat hunting could be a start with any cyber threat intelligence. We have MISP. I don't know how to even every person pronounce it in a different way. I call it MISP. So, or Intelligence X, or IBM X-Force, or Alien Vault OTX. These are just an example of the public available cyber threat intelligence. So day to day, they release a new information about the indicators, the type of the attack, and the new cyber criminals related activities. So as a threat hunter, I should proactively read them, fetch the recent data, and match. If it's something applicable to my company, then I have to go and look for the evidences. Am I hacked? Am I under attack? Or I'm safe? Peace of mind. So it could be triggered by the result of the other assessments. For example, the example that I given earlier about the web application and penetration testing. So our web application is operational. It's not in the testing stage anymore. It's already operations, and actually the customers using it. So we do the second or third round of the penetration testing, and we find 2 vulnerabilities there. Is there any guarantee that no attackers out there discover it earlier and hack to our application based on that particular vulnerability? So I'm, as a threat hunter, should go and check. It could be based on the knowledge base. There are a lot of good knowledge base, like MITRE provide a bunch of them. We will talk about the different later, or even the attack knowledge base navigator by the MITRE. So they are technically a knowledge base of all the techniques, tactics, and procedures that can be used by attackers. So when we have a system in hand, it could be a good idea to check these knowledge bases, identify all the attacks which is applicable to that particular system, and then go and test them proactively to check whether we have been compromised or not. And finally, the checklist, the guidelines. For example, here, identify application entry points. This is one of the checklists for OWASP, for web application penetration testing. So if I want to do the application penetration testing, one of the test cases is go and check the entry points. So I'm a threat hunter. Why I should wait for something to happen and then I go and check which entry point used by the attackers? I go proactively, check all those entry points to look for the risk, the exposure to the internet, and the chance that it could be breach, and come up with a remediation. So guys, before I continue, I forgot to tell you that any question, feel free to just drop it in the chat. Later at the end of the session, I will refer to the chat box, because maybe you have a question in your mind at the moment, and if you wait to the end of the session, it may gone. So threat hunting is good. We have to do it, but we should consider a few important factors to have a successful threat hunting. A successful threat hunting cannot be done without these three pillars: total visibility, data availability and quality, and situational awareness. What I mean by total visibility. So you have to make sure all the servers in your organizations are in the scope to be assessed. So do you have the full visibility? Have you listed down all the servers in your company? So I'm not talking about a small to medium-sized company that we may have like 1 or 2 servers. I'm talking about the huge network in the large enterprises, which is operating for the decades. So in that example, we could have servers in the different branches, which is not necessarily in the same physical location. In that scenario, asset management is very important to make sure we have a total visibility, to put all the unknowns in our known basket. So to do that, we should do the discovery, data collection, passive, active. Any technique we use, the message is just to collect data about our environment, to know the things exist in our environment. So when we collect the data, we should validate them. We should make sure that they have accuracy, they are complete, reliable, relevant, and they are in time. So let me give you the example. For example, I want to do the threat hunting as a point of view of the internal attacker. I sit in the network and I done the live host discovery. I have a bunch of IP, which is up and live in our network. So I need to validate them to see how accurate they are. Because the more accurate the data, the more successful the threat hunting. And at the end, we should have the situational awareness. We should know about normals in our environment. So I want to analyze my network traffic. I have a DDoS, I have a brute force, or I have anything which cause to the sudden rise of the network traffic. Maybe I have sales, right? Maybe this is the Independent Day, this is some festival, this is national things, and a lot of customers come because I open up the sales. This is how important is situational awareness. I should know what is the baseline for my server, for my web application, for my everything, even for logins. If I'm a remote user and in the normal basis, I log into that server every day between 8 a.m. to, for example, 5 p.m. This is what we call it normal. If you notice suddenly at 2 a.m., I connected from somewhere outside the country or outside the comfort or usual physical destinations, then we can say this is something unusual. Why? Because I know my system, I have situational awareness, I know my baseline, and know something happened out of that box. So when we collect the data, we validate them, we should classify them. We can group them. For example, I collect all the servers specification in my environment. So then I classify them and I group them and I filter out them. Okay, these are running this operating system. This is the Windows and this is the version. These are operating based on that type of the Linux. So because classification help me to have more organized threat hunting. So I may have a review and analysis to have a baseline potential threat, and then I come up with the report. So this is the part that we normally don't talk in the threat hunting. We suddenly jump into threat hunting. Okay, I have something in the hand. I have some hypothesis, educated case here, educated guess here. Let's go and hunt. Okay, good. But this is a very minimal scope based on what you know. Are you aware what are the other things in your organization, in your network that you don't, that you don't know about them? We should proactively go and discover them as well and make sure we cover as much as possible in our organizations. So once we've done a data collections, the reports. The reports is not the vulnerability reports. I mean, the report is whatever we found and we believe we should do the threat hunting on them. So in this particular presentation, I go for the structure threat hunting because this is what I personally practice more compared to the unstructured. So when we have a structure threat hunting, I have the finding on the assets. I classify them. For example, I have the certain level of with a specific operating system or a specific technology. Then I can formulate the hypothesis. How to formulate hypotheses? Again, based on the 4 things. May have reports from our practices and engagements. Maybe I heard something about a recent attack. Maybe I just follow a best practices, or a very important things. I heard something from community. Threat hunting, just like any other domain in cybersecurity, rely on the community. Make sure you connect to the experts on the social media, Twitter, LinkedIn. Make sure you attend the different webinars, seminars, being in touch with the professionals to make sure you receive the latest information about current attacks. That helps you to come up with the hypothesis. For every hypothesis, we should know the type and the source of the data. So if my hypothesis is that, for example, the attack says that if the certain amount of the specific traffic generated within a period of time from a certain geographical location, it could be the indicator of a type of the attack. So my hypothesis says that, okay, if I found a bunch of the network generated by that IP from that location on that particular time, I may be under attack. So I formulate this hypothesis, then I should check which type of data I need to analyze those, to analyze and look for those indicators. And then what are the tools I should use to fetch the data, analyze the data, and search for the signs. Hypothesis should be relevance, is very important, should be related to our technology, and it should be testable. Means I cannot come with some imaginary movie style things, 2 monitors, big eyeglasses, and then a few keyboard type, and then boom, I find the things. It should be testable. I should have the capability, I should have the right data and right tools in the hand. Again, considering all of these things, it may fall into 3 different outcomes. Affirm, reject, inclusive. So if I find the relevant data that prove the attack is happening, I affirm the hypothesis. It could be not related. For example, I assume that attack is happening or happened to me. I go check, everything is clear. So I reject the hypothesis. But we should not confuse inclusive with a rejection. Rejection means that I have a proper data, I have the enough capabilities, I have proper set of tools and techniques, I check everything and I couldn't find anything. It simply means I'm not under attack. Inclusive means that, no, maybe my hypothesis is not mature enough. I need to redefine it, refine it. I have to use a better tools. Oh, I forget to check that source, that source of the data. So my data may not accurate and complete. My tools is not effective. My knowledge is not sufficient. So this is how we have to work periodically in our hypothesis, techniques, and technology that we use to make sure we have the proper threat hunting. I'm pretty sure if you are in the threat hunting, you heard about this pyramid of pain. Excuse me. I'm pretty sure you heard about this pyramid of pain. When it shows the different layers in the threat hunting, start in the very simple one with the hash value, IP address, domain names. Again and again, in my opinion, I don't call them threat hunting. I call them IOC-based detection because I know a hash value. It's already known, so I go and detect. I more believe for the threat hunting, hypothesis one, anomaly-based, educated guess, or whatever we call it, took place in the 3 upper layers. When we have a network and host artifact, when we have some sort of the tools that installed in our machines, and the TTPs, the technique used by the attackers. So I go to do the deep analysis on them, look for anomalies, look for any deviation from my baseline to check these are part of the normal operation, but just newly happened, or no, this is really a malicious or suspicious things happen by the guy with a bad intention. So the question here is that what technique I should do? Okay, you said this is the human driven. I should use my hands. I should do it manual. Manual observation is always there. From the moment I even key in my command, I see the first result. From the classification to filtering to analysis, manual observation is always there. But we need a lot of time, knowledge, and expertise and experience if we really want to do the things manual. And it's not that necessary. When I can use the tools to automate the things, why should I struggle in the field with the manual? Manual things is really good when we do the practicing or we are dealing with the really sophisticated and unknown things. That's why the friend of mine, Charles, teach me a very nice lesson. He said, Meisam, automate what we know and spend time finding what we don't know. That logic, let it related to this pyramid. Hash value, I don't need to spend time on that. I know, I just automated it. But a TTP, a new attack, I'm not aware of that. I spend time. I use my manual observation, my manual skills. I use my automation, tools, a script, and I use advanced analytical techniques to identify and profile that newly launched attack. And if it's possible, at the end of my investigation and hunt, I develop IOC, IOA, or any other related information that help others to detect the same attack. Because this is not a rocket science. Something happened to me may happen to my neighbor. So in order to make it a little bit clear, let's put it in an example. I use a Windows Live analysis as an example. Why? Because I truly believe this is an offer we cannot refuse. So why I use the Windows? Because the scary report released by the Microsoft security updates in the last July 2021. I remember I even wrote about it in my LinkedIn because I'm right there daily. and I give a shock to the community as well. 117 vulnerabilities with 90 days. 117 vulnerabilities, 90 days. And a few of those 90 days are exploitable, can be exploited. Technically, it means that 0 day, no alert. Because if I want to deploy a tool and wait for the alert, in the best cases, I can find known bats, detect everything based on the fact, which is a known attacks, and it's reactive. Something happened, then the alert generates. I'm, as a threat hunter, I'm much interested to detect unknowns, look for the anomalies, not the facts and anomalies. Let me correct myself. And I like to be proactive. So now I'm telling you, we have a Windows server there. Shall we respect the traditions and we keep it? What do I mean by traditions? So ideally, when something happens, we go forensically collect the data and do the dead forensic analysis for the deep root cause investigation. That's a must and a very best practice, but no harm to put something on the top, right? To add something on the top. Live analysis with the mindset of a threat hunting. So it's not only because of it's give us the proactive approach or benefits. Sometimes we may not able to do the dead forensics. I give you a few examples. For example, you have a huge RAID-based storage in your server. It may take hours and hours, sometimes days, to make a forensic image. We may not have that much time. So, and sometimes it may not even practical to do that. That's why, apart from the risks associated to the live analysis, because any unintentional changes could be happen at any time, that's why to do the live analysis, we should have the enough expertise and knowledge how to deal with the fragile data. But still, we should consider it. So this is a very high-level technical checklist I prepared. This is what actually I'm writing at the moment in my blog as well, the SecHub Medium, to what we should look for in the Windows operating system. Of course, we could start with the system information and configuration. We have user and groups, service and applications, DLLs, network, and file and scripts. Before I dive into the different sections to briefly explain what we should look for, the main things that we should consider during the live analysis, we should minimize the changes. For example, if you're supposed to use a tools, we should never copy that tools on the target machine. We should have a forensically clean storage. We install and set up our tools and script there. We connect it to the target device, and then we run the scripts on tools from the external storage. So if we want to save any result from our investigation, we keep it on that storage, nothing in the machines. Of course, we cannot eliminate all the changes to the 0 level, but we should minimize. So avoid installing any tools on the system. We should not copy anything on the system. Use the genuine tools, reputable tools, not just simply go to the Google, search for the tools, the first main script, oh, it looks nice. We copy it, we use it, it could open another backdoor. Our machine gun, our investigation machine gun, our organization gun. We should make sure validate every piece of information and tools before using it. So we should use the light tools as much as possible. That's why most of my examples is based on the Windows building commands, PowerShell, or a very light non-GUI tools, because I want to minimize the changes. So let's have a quick look at the different sections. So here we have system informations. So in this stage, we go to collecting information about operating system, name, version, build, all the directories, any driver installed, the hotfixes, the latest patches. This is very information. Can you relate this to the one of those success factor? Exactly, situational awareness. By collecting this kind of informations, I know what type of, for example, the patches. In this example, I use the system info, looking for anything start with the KB, because this is the standard for the hot fixes for the Windows operating system. I want to know, okay, I'm dealing with this server, with this operating system, with this Windows machine. What are the current patches there and the hot fixes there? Is there anyone missing? Oh, how come you claim that something is missing? We have a very automated patch management, and we roll out everything on time. Yes, I appreciate that. But again, I believe on the tasty cheese. Regardless of how effective is in the process, I'm as a threat hunter, later as a digital forensic investigator, must validate everything. Because there is no way for me to rely on the assumption that I assume everything worked perfectly and I'm fine. I can't sleep at the night actually with that mindset. Okay, anyway, actually, we collect this information to understand the current state of the machine. Then we can plan accordingly. Users, very important. Users, the group the users belong to, and the privilege they have. Because abusing the valid user's credential, manipulating the existing user, even sometimes deleting a current user is amongst the techniques used by the attackers. Just go to the MITRE attack knowledge base and go for the execution, if I didn't mistakes, on the valid user account. Actually, you can see in the different sectors that how the attackers can use the misuse or abuse the user accounts for privilege escalation, for avoiding the detection, and to hide that activity amongst normal activities. Service and applications, this is a must, because I want to know what kind of services and applications are installed or running in that particular machine. For example, here, I give an example of the CloudMe Sync. CloudMe Sync particular version is vulnerable to the buffer overflow. So can you educate your guests? Can you come up with a hypothesis? I have a Windows machine there. I have a list of the service and applications. I have an application which has a known vulnerability. Is there any chance that I get compromised via that vulnerability? This is what I need to check. Now I have to check what type of the data I need. Buffer overflow is remote, right? I should go for the remote access log to see, do I have any odd remote access? In some certain of the activities, I may need to forward the port. The attacker may need to forward the port from this machine to the outside to give a remote access to the locally accessible port. So I should form up the hypothesis. Later, we will talk about how to form a hypothesis about, for example, the port forwarding detection, which is one of the challenging ones. There is no straight IOC based on my knowledge. If you have the IOC for the direct port forwarding detection, I would be more happy if you share with me. So process and DLLs and handles. Definitely, as a threat hunter, digital forensic, incident response, anything related to deal with the attack, I go for the running processes. Not only running processes, not only whatever start with the S, because based on the mindset, any process start with the S could be suspicious. System like SV host. Not only the processes, but all the DLLs that are associated to that process. Because we have some attack like DLL injection, right? DLL hijack. Are the DLLs in the same folder with the processes? Is the process from the old location connect to the communicate and access to the one of the system DLLs? See, these are all the things that we can go through to look for the anomalies. Network and internet, for sure. Apart from the fact that I need to check what is accessed by the user, which user access to which resource over the network and over internet, the web browser. I strongly believe on port to process mapping. Means which active process, which is running at the moment, establish communication outside my company over a network. Which port, which IP. So technically, I look for all the IPs. I check the reputations, the active connections, process ports, download file, and everything related to the network activities. You remember I said as a threat hunter, when we detect the attack, we generate IOC for them. For example, there is a zero-day malware operating in my Windows based on the, for example, the hierarchy of the processes, some behavior analyses, the old location, deep malware analyses. I found this is a malware. And then I noticed this malware connected to the certain IPs with the certain ports. That IP and port could be an IOC. So of course, this is not a very strong IOC because the attackers keep changing the IP addresses. I just given as an example to make the clear the process. And obviously, we go for all the files and scripts, all the executable, their location, who download, who install them, and we look for any anomaly amongst them. If you are really keen to know more details about the things, I highly suggest you to take a look on the defense. This is a knowledge graph-based cybersecurity countermeasure recently launched by the MITRE. It tells us about, especially I love the detect part when, for example, it tells us in the platform monitoring, local account monitoring, what we should look for. So we have defense aviation, initial, and each sector, what exactly we look for. If you want it a little bit technical, especially for the Windows, feel free to check my blog because I write everything there based on the different commands. I'm not whitelisting any tools there. I'm not whitelisting any command. I just simply give a knowledge base for everything we have in our hands. By the way, it's in the early state of the journey, and I would be more than happy if you come back to me with the feedbacks and I can improve the series. So let's go through a few examples. The example number one, a very down at the very down layer of our pyramid in the threat hunting. So I have a hash value. I have a known hash value. So I run a task list here, which is a built-in Windows command. I find the SVC host. Why SVC host? Is based on experience. Not I mean SVC host. Based on experience, normally the attacker may impersonate themselves as a standard Windows process. That's why it's very important for every operating system, you know the basic, you know the baseline. What is the standard and normals? For example, in Windows, I would go for hierarchy of the processes based on the process ID and process parent ID. So I don't want to go in technical deep in this talk, but I would be more than happy to discuss with the organization or organizers later to have hands-on and practical threat hunting based on the Windows or any other things. So for when I have the list of the processes, I go and check the location. I want to know, is there any process in the old location? And in this example, the SVC host is located in the user CipherHub desktop. SVC host in the normal situation should be located in the Windows System 32, not in that location. This is alarming. So we go and we generate the hash. No, this hash could be cross-check. This is what I call it detection engine, not hunting. I have this hash. I check it with the different databases to check whether this is something known and our detection failed, or if something totally new, then this is a fantastic hunt. I go to analyze that malware piece of the executable file to understanding, and then I generate the IOC for that. Number two, IP address. I check I just use again a net state, which is a very common built-in command for the Windows to find all the active connections, establish, waiting, or listening. But mostly I'm interested on the established one. I combine this with the process to port mapping. So in the first command, I ask NetState to give me all the established connections. Here at the end, I have the PID, process ID. I use another command, task list. You look for a specific process ID. Now I can tell which process which is running in my computer establish that connection. So if I want to combine the example 1 and example 2 and search in the current available public data on the cyber threat intelligence databases, can you see the numbers? I have 8 million plus. Manual, never work. Not to blame, we are human. This is where we should use the automation. Means, even though if I manually do the process to port mapping and find some information, I can feed those information to my pre-written script to automatically go and search for me and give me the result. Or I can use a ready-to-use tools. Again, I'm not whitelisting these tools. This is just an example to show how we can use the automation to do the things faster in the larger scale. Port forwarding, as I promised, because there is no simple IOC to detect the port forwarding. So earlier I showed you that we have a Cloud Me Sync application on the Windows box, which listening, for example, to the port 8888. This is locally, means if the attacker want to conduct the attack on that application, need to have remote access to that local port. This is how the attacker may have initial access and then use a port forwarding to give the access to these particular applications, conduct, for example, buffer overflow to have the access with a more higher privilege. So, and I'm as a threat hunter, I find that I have the this application in my computer. No, one of the hypotheses in my mind is there any port forwarding happening in my environment? Let's go and check. MITRE T1572 stated that for the port forwarding detection, we can look for evidences at the client side and in the network side. So at the client level, we should check all running process, look for any application associated to port forwarding. It could be P-Link, OpenSSH, or the one that I use here, Chisel. You can know the trick here. It could be another application with a different name, but no harm. First, I start to look for something I know. If I couldn't find, then I may go for anomaly base. That's why it's very important to know the base of our environment. So in this example, I find the Chisel here pretty straightforward because the agenda is to transfer the meaning of the process. And I find that it has some sort of a network communication over a certain port. On the other hand, the MITRE again says we should go through the network analysis to look for any uncommon data flow. So one of the examples for data filtering and data classification, I collect a network packets or my entire network. So can I jump in that ocean and look for the Nemo? How much time do I have? Attackers don't give us that much time. Okay, buddy, take your time, enjoy. You have another month to analyze. That's why I have no choice rather than break down my data to the different category and go to the different categories one by one. For example, when I go for the network analysis, I go for example, the packet size. All the sender and receiver that have the higher rate of communication. So not to mention that I look for the known IPs at first place, that one aside. If I know any malicious IP, I go for that first. Any malicious URL, I go for that first. Okay, if I found them, happy hunt. I put them aside. No, I go to something that I don't know. For example, one of the techniques, I go for the higher conversations. For example, if you go to Wireshark, you can go to the statistics, conversations, and then you can get the information and you can go to the statistics. In the conversation, you can see who talked with who. In the statistics, you can see the other related informations. So by analyzing the packets based on the client side information, I have the IP, I have the port, I look for the related packet transfer over network, and then I found a pattern of the chisel in the packet, in the network activities. I have that in the network activities. I have that in the client. Can I conclude is attack? Not necessarily. It may be a normal IT operation. I have to validate with my IT team. Hey, buddy, you have this application in that machine. I see some port forwarding. This is something you are aware of. You install it to have some sort of the remote access from home. And if you are not aware, sorry to say, we may be under attack. No, we trigger the IR, we trigger the root cause analysis, we trigger the digital forensics. These are a very simple examples. But when the attacks are really complex, sophisticated, multi-stages, and we deal with the huge volume of the data, which is changing over the time so rapidly, and they come with the different types, we may need something more than tools and ordinary threat hunter. This is where we go for advanced analytic techniques, a practical one, like neural network, simulation and visualization, and pattern recognition. I have written two, I think, paper a few years back on the botnet detection and mobile botnet detection using pattern recognition, simulation and neural networks. Any of you interested, feel free to request. I would be more than happy to share with you. So I have a typical saying at the end of every presentation that this presentation ends here, but the hunting never ends. This is never ending battle, because regardless of how secure we are, how much our budget, the human error is there, the misconfiguration are there, a lot of factors is there, a lot of holes in our Swiss cheese. Hope you enjoyed the meeting, the presentation. I have a side effect of having too much meetings, and as an autopilot, I just said meeting. So again,
Thanks a lot.
thank you very much.
Yes, sir. So mainly some are saying that, some are asking that, are you like, can you give us some tips in the bug bounty, bug hunting, or threat hunting?
So what kind of tip specifically? Because if there is any certain question, I would be more than happy to answer here. If there is so generic, you may connect to me later, and I would be more than happy that help. But if there is any certain,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thanks. Those are the maximum we received were general questions only, sir. So participants, if you have any kind of questions, please ask in the Q&A session. So we will be waiting for next 2 to 3 minutes. So I request not to ask any general questions, which is available on internet easily.
I think we should give a chance, Bala, to them. If they have any question, they can get back to me later, and I would be more than happy.
Yes, sir, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sir. So since we are not having any questions, so thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for accepting our request and coming to the session.
Pleasure.
And taking out your about almost 90 minutes of your time to share the knowledge and experiences you are having. It was a pleasure connecting have you, sir.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir, for
Bye.
being at Gravithon 2021. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you.